Hello and good evening, everybody, and you're all very welcome to the Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum. My name is Paddy Kelly. I'm the Managing Director of Tegra, and I'm the Chairman of Guaranteed Irish. I'm sure as we're all involved in construction, you all know this is Guaranteed Irish Construction Month, where Guaranteed Irish focus on the needs and the issues within the construction industry. We normally have this forum in Croke Park. Last year we were in Croke Park, and we had an absolutely fantastic meeting in Croke Park last year, and we came out with a fantastic idea of building and designing, etc., a Guaranteed Irish house. But we won't be talking too much about that today. It has progressed, I'm glad to say. We have the Construction Industry Federation, the Royal Institute of Architects, the Chartered Surveyors, and Engineers Ireland all involved in it. And it is progressing, albeit slowly, but we want to get it right. Today we've allocated 45 minutes. So this is going to be a slick and to the point forum. We have three special guests today: Minister Darragh O'Brien, Philip Nugent, and Tom Parland. Three very experienced people, and three people that are the right three people to have in the room with us today. I want to thank all three of you for giving us the time. I know you're all busy people and you have very busy schedules, and to give us this time is really, really appreciated by Guaranteed Irish. Without any further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Breed O'Connell. She's our CEO of Guaranteed Irish, and Breed is going to chair the panel discussion. Thank you.
Many thanks, Paddy. Just by way of introduction, I'd like to thank the Minister again, Darragh O'Brien, TD, who was appointed Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage in June 2020, very new to the role, elected TD in the constituency of Dublin Fingal. He's had various positions within the Oireachtas, including the Vice Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, member of the Oireachtas Committee on Justice, Equality, Defence and Law Reform, leader of Fianna Fáil and the Seanad, and opposition frontbench spokesperson on Dublin Foreign Affairs and Housing. Minister O'Brien is committed to examining the best way forward in terms of housing and accommodation solutions and enabling the people to live fulfilling lives here in Ireland in a safe, sustainable and environmentally friendly manner. Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Philip Nugent is the Assistant Secretary for Circular Economy, Waste Policy and Natural Resources at the Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment. His responsibilities include developing a whole-of-government approach to the circular economy, waste policy, geoscience policy and regulation, the Geological Survey of Ireland and inland fisheries. So a broad brief there all around the circular economy. Tom Parland, who you well know as your DG from the Construction Industry Federation, and indeed his own background in politics. Since he's become the DG of the CIF, Tom has helped drive awareness of the important role that the infrastructure investment can play in supporting Irish economic recovery, both in the short and long term, particularly in emerging industries, particularly in the energy retrofitting and renewable energy sectors within the construction sector. So many thanks for joining us. I won't delay much more other than to say I'm going to kick straight off with the questions that we would like to put to our speakers, starting with you, Minister, if I may, in relation to the overall plan that you've launched recently. You aim to start to meet demand for housing with some new initiatives that should expedite the process. What is in the immediate pipeline for the next 12 months in particular, and where will the construction sector see activity first, Minister?
Yeah, Breed, firstly, thanks for the invitation. Delighted to be with you here today and with your members in Guaranteed Irish, be that virtually, and I know we met yesterday as well. This year's going to be a challenging year for the sector. Probably we were projecting 25,000 housing completions before the COVID shutdown, okay? That reduced as low as 14,000, and I'm talking both public and private housing. With the implementation of the July stimulus, we thankfully have seen some improvement there. And one of the things that the sector have mentioned to me was when I increased the Help to Buy grant for first-time buyers from 20,000 to 30,000, we have seen, and that is a big help for people to get on the ladder there. We have seen a move now towards 16,000 to 16,800 housing completions nationwide, which is still way below what would have been projected pre-COVID on 25,000. So I think it shows the challenge that's there. So firstly, in the July stimulus, Yes, the Help to Buy grant, because I want people to own their own home. I've been made no bones about that myself. I believe in home ownership. I believe it's a noble and honest aspiration for people, and I believe it should be supported by government. And that's why in the budget, we'll talk about this later on, I am working on certain affordability measures for affordable rental and affordable purchase. But in the shorter term, in relation to housing delivery, the houses that I'm responsible for being the public and social homes, I have a housing delivery unit that I established, and every single week we meet. I'm putting the pressure on there for delivery. So through our approved housing bodies like Clwyd and Tua and others, they're actually going to hit target this year. Even with the shutdown in the sector, which was shorter than the shutdown for the private sector, we're going to actually slightly exceed our targets on approved housing body builds, which is really significant. And on the local authority side of things, again, through our housing delivery office, I'm putting the pressure on there, and we're projecting at around 80% to target. We were as low as 70. So I want to get that up as high as possible and try to bring in what was to be completed in Q4 and may slipped into next year, to put the pressure on to bring that back. So we were projecting on new builds only about 7,700 new builds in public housing. It's projecting now around 5,700. So I'm hoping to get that up to about 6,000. So that is important activity in the market. And I think what your members will realize, if you look at total completions this year of between 15 and 16,000, that the state is going to be responsible for half of them this year. That's something that obviously we need to be acutely aware of into next year. Another couple of things that I've done to help the sector, but also to get housing stock and houses back into use, was 40 million euro I provided in July, which was to go towards vacant properties and voids, what are called local authority stock that isn't being used. And I set a target of 2,500 of those. So many small contractors across the country now, and every single one of our 31 local authorities, they've all been set a target to bring back in 2,500 units back into use. That we're going to meet that target. And when I say back into use, it means the work's completed and the home is either occupied or at the very least allocated before the 31st of December this year. So that's been really welcomed by the local authorities. It has had an impact at a local level, particularly with our smaller contractors as well. And it points a way forward into next year that I intend to, should this work be done well, which it is, I've no doubt about it, that I'll be looking to put in a voids budget for next year as well, and start to reduce the amount of vacant stock that we have there. There are other things. Obviously, we're coming into the budget. I'm in the middle of budget negotiations right now. So my job is to make sure that we increase the capital provision for housing for next year. And that's what I intend to do. We have an ambitious program in the program for government on housing delivery, both private and public. We should probably be hitting about, the National Planning Framework says about 25,000 homes a year. Others say higher, 30 to 35,000. So that's a challenge. So we got to look at our planning system. But we got to look at the affordability issue as well, which is a big issue for people. I see lots of individuals who are paying a lot of rent, who are working hard, can't save to reach their deposit. That's why I help with the the first time buyers grant increase. But we need to look at them, and so I'm working on affordability measures with partners in government and indeed with people in the sector here, to try to bring proposals to government that we can hopefully establish an affordable purchase scheme into next year, and also looking at things like affordable rent. So there's a lot of good work going on. That's just a brief summary. I don't want to take up too much time on that particular one, but it's been a challenging year. Could I just say brief though as well that the sector have been incredible in the way in which that they've been able to adapt to the new reality that is COVID. The construction sector have always been flexible, have been adaptable, and with new work practices to make sure that our workers are safe. It shows that productivity hasn't really dropped actually through COVID in the main, bar the shutdown. So we've been able to make sure that our output is steady and hasn't dropped, even though new work practices are in place to keep our workers safe.
Okay, thank you for that, Minister. On the back of that, Philip, if I can come to you and maybe come off mute. The question, I suppose, that a lot of people are talking about is with the new goals within driving the environmental changes and the circular economy that you're in charge of, Maybe you'll take us through the new incentives and rewards and checks and policing that are going to go with your department with the introduction of the new plan for waste, etc. Because there are going to be extra costs for the builder and for the construction sector. And what are the rewards and incentives that go with that?
Thanks, Breed. Good afternoon, Minister, and other attendees. Yeah, there's a lot happening, obviously, at the minute in terms of climate action measures and circular economy. I think there's significant opportunity actually for the construction sector in those. So traditionally, you know, the usual view is that the construction sector has a negative role in terms of climate and resources impact, but it also can play a significant role in tackling climate change. So the Climate Action Plan and the Programme for Government set out ambitious targets for the number and depth of residential retrofits to be completed by 2030. And there's a huge opportunity, I think, for the construction sector here. This is highly labour intensive. A lot of job creation goes with that. So current action plan aims to reduce emissions from the built environment by about half by 2030 through this sort of retrofitting. And to achieve this, we have a goal of retrofitting 500,000 homes to B or standard B2 by 2030 and installing 600,000 heat pumps. So this is a massive ask. Construction sector skills are going to be essential and capacity to deliver this level of retrofitting. So I think there's going to be a significant increase in working career opportunities in retrofitting in particular over the coming years. We're also working on multi-annual retrofitting plan with other departments and agencies, and we've had really constructive engagement with the sector on this. I think as an immediate step, while the retrofitting plan is being prepared, the government has provided, as part of the July stimulus package, an additional 100 million for retrofitting, and I think this will support retrofitting activity in the remainder of this year. Looking at circular economy and less in energy efficiency, again, I think there's significant potential for an opportunity for the construction sector here, because one of the focuses is, I mean, the construction industry is, construction and demolition waste is a huge part of our annual national waste. I think about 6.5 million tonnes, and about 80% of this is soil and stone, which has significant potential to be reused. And lots of the other material is, you know, plastic and glass and other things that I think we're missing the resource potential of at the minute. And one of the things that we've been working with the construction industry in recent years on is, how do we develop national criteria for end of waste? How do we develop national criteria for byproducts? And I think if we can do that, and if we can improve the way in which the byproduct and end of waste criteria work, then we can keep so much more material out of the waste regulatory system, which means that it can be used without ever being classified as a waste. It remains as a product for longer, and it can be reused. So I think those sorts of prevention measures and a real focus on improving our byproduct and end waste regulatory processes can have a significant positive impact for the construction sector.
Okay, thanks for that, Philip. In relation, Tom, if I can come to you again, coming off mute, and while I'm lining up the question here with Tom, just to say to those who are in attendance to please use the question and answers box for the questions and answers the questions I'll put to the panel at the end of the session. Tom, can I ask you in relation to the Construction Industry Federation, the Minister alluded to the fact that the construction sector has actually kind of caught up and kept abreast of a pace in terms of its output since I suppose we've started to open up. Has that, what's the lie of the land in the construction sector? Where are we in terms of productivity, jobs, opportunities, and are we losing jobs? Are we holding our own? Where are we at with it? Give us an overview of the construction sector briefly.
Very good, Breed. Well, I think, you know, we were closed down entirely from the end of March to the end of May, so that was a significant period and a significant loss of production. And the CSO would suggest that for Q2 there was a 30% drop in output. But we won't really know until the end of the year what the full ramifications are. I suppose the outlook for next year is probably one of the most worrying aspects, and the recent PMI by Ulster Bank showed how nervous contractors are the future. You know, they're all busy completing the work, whether it be contracted or otherwise. That's the case. We reckon that about, just in line with what the Minister said, we expect that we'll have completed about 17,000 units by the end of this year, which is only about 3,000 below sort of our own estimate. But the housing commencements would appear to be down, and the figures we have that they're down very substantially. So people are finishing out what they're on site to do, but there's just a bit of reluctance. And obviously the ball will be back in your court, Dara, with regard to, and I do appreciate that you've announced already, the increase in the Help to Buy, which is a factor. But in terms of the contracting side, then the public sector sites are a little bit slow to get going, but they're up and running fairly well now. We reckon there's about 1,100 sites altogether, active building sites in the Republic, and I reckon about 99% of those are at full capacity. So we're effectively, currently, we're going almost as good as we ever were. We met with the two senior ministers, Pascal and Michael McGrath, and our two junior ministers earlier this week on Monday with regard to our pre-budget submission. And clearly our message to them is to give a strong signal that from the government that they will invest in capital infrastructure. We know that there's nervousness, with the big capital projects, and there was a lot of fuss made about the fact that Google pulled out of a deal that they were thinking about. I live down in Google land, and lately, from what I see, Google like to buy properties. They're very cash rich, and maybe it wasn't such a big surprise that they pulled out of a lease. But anyhow, there is going to be some nervousness maybe about the investment in big projects next year. So I think it's essential that the government would give a good signal. And they're very ambitious in terms of what they say they're going to do, talking about a 9 billion capital expenditure next year. But we know that tendering and works going out is very, very slow. The Office of Government Procurement have a lot of issues on board and a lot of reforms that they're going to do and so on. So everybody needs to get the finger out in order for that to happen. We do know, and I'm sure Darragh O'Brien will be reminding the Minister of Finance that money was never as cheap. I did see that the NTMA borrowed over €1 billion lately at a minus interest rate. So in 5 years' time, they're obliged to pay back less than they borrowed. So we're never going to see that again. So, investment in housing infrastructure, investment in, as Philip said, in the green agenda looks like a very good idea now. Generally, investment in infrastructure and in building means that nearly half of it comes back immediately. I mean, it's been spent with the like of Paddy Kelly's company and all the other guaranteed Irish firms, and that gives the immediate job stimulus. But then after that, you've got the massive infrastructure advantage and creating better quality of life, better facilities in terms of dealing with COVID, and better housing facilities. So I think that's where we are. We got a very good reception insofar as you can from two ministers that have a very challenging agenda. I know lots of the other advocacy groups are in with the begging bowl and saying, look, you got to keep supporting our businesses or they'll never open again and so on. And there are other sectors in very severe difficulty. But our good positive message was, look, we're up and running. We're almost at 100%. We want to keep doing that. We want to keep providing the infrastructure. We want to help solve the housing crisis. We want to keep the jobs going and the POE, PRSI, the VAT, and contributing to the economy. So, we believe we're a good target at the moment, but we have to wait and see.
Thanks for that, Tom. Minister, I'm just going to come back to you on that exact point, and particularly in the retrofitting space. What are the plans and the budget that you're allocating? And I know you've got the Midlands project, but do you see this as being rolled out across the country, and there's opportunities there for additional jobs and additional for innovations, particularly, and safeguarding local communities when you think about older buildings and local villages, towns, etc.? And are there incentives and rewards for Irish retrofitting businesses getting involved here?
Well, firstly, Breed, I'll just come back to a couple of things that Tom said, because I think they're important. Obviously, if people look at our programme for government and the housing section of it, which is Housing for All, we've made some very firm commitments there. One of them is delivering over 50,000 public homes over the term of the government, and I intend to do that. And I'm looking for more capital next year to increase our public housing provision. Tom will know as well, and in fairness, the sector have been very helpful in bringing forward their ideas in this, and I've been engaging with the CIF and others indeed on that in relation to affordability measures. So, because I want people, as I said, to own their own homes. We need more homes, we need more infrastructure, we need schools. The sector does pay back into the economy, and I think we're at a position whereby we're at the start of our getting into the detail of the budget. Certainly from my own team's perspective and from my perspective in the Customs House, we're pushing very hard in that regard, because I was out early this morning now in St. Mary's Mansions with the full refurb, 70-year-old buildings that were refurbed, 80 new apartments right in the middle of Dublin City. for 80 families that were there. A big investment of 23 million by the state in that project in conjunction with Clúid Housing. They're the type of things that we can do, and I see that as a flagship for it. The state right now, and I think many of your members will know this, is supporting tens of thousands of jobs in Ireland through the wage subsidy scheme. There are financial pressures on the state, but my own view as Minister for Housing is that the recovery that we will come to will very much be capital led. And for many of the reasons, or some of the reasons that Tom has mentioned there too. And it's about us finding the balance that we can get through the next 8 to 9 months and living with COVID and making sure business stay viable, stay supported through direct interventions with by the state as well, because that's been really, really significant. And actually, now to get to your question, that's a real politician, I didn't answer the question you put to me first, but in relation to retrofit, it's already been said, like the retrofit is a big part of the government's plan. What I'm doing as housing minister is I'm going to kick off a pilot, and quite a significant pilot, called the Midlands Retrofit, where I'm going to target 750 social homes over 8 counties, and these would be the Bord na Móna counties as part of the Just Transition. So it's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to ensure that the homes that we own are more efficient, brought up to a B2 standard. Heat pumps where appropriate, and very good work, but also part of a retraining for a number of people who are in the sector, in the peat sector with Bord na Móna, and retraining them into retrofitting, because we've about 500,000 homes that we'll need to retrofit. So I want, as Minister for Housing, to lead by example there. So this first step would be 750 homes, 20 million euro investment in those homes by way of a pilot. And then I'm working indeed with Department of the Environment as well, and climate action in relation to preparations for our budget into next year. But I see this as a really big piece that the sector will be involved in, a great part of work for retraining for our apprentices and for best practice. So I intend that this work will start this year, actually, Breed, with the 8 counties that are involved. 4 of them one is actually concluded its tenders, and the remainder of them are very close to doing that. And this will be, a lot of this work will be for local contractors as well, that keep business local and keep business Irish. Obviously, as part of, I very much welcome the initiative launched by Guaranteed Irish in relation to the Guaranteed Irish House. I think it's a fantastic initiative by way of a one-stop shop. I would certainly, as Minister, encourage people to use it. As you know, we're part of the European Union, so I can't incentivise people using Irish product in one respect, and I'm not financially incentivized, but I think the quality of that product, and you look at Paddy Kelly and others companies, the quality of the product that's there is worldwide and known, and I think we should certainly be trying to, as a state, use more and more of that, and that's my intention, certainly as Minister for Housing.
Well, just to note that whole piece with the European Union, as you know, Guaranteed Irish has repositioned itself in the last 4 years, and we're very much inclusive of all economies and all multinational businesses who support jobs and communities here in Ireland and make Ireland look good. So in terms of that state aid issue is now gone and resolved. So we would be looking to, I suppose, come to you, Minister, and say if there was if there's going to be support or incentives and rewards for businesses who are going for public tenders if they're Guaranteed Irish, because at the end of the day, they're supporting jobs and economy here in Ireland within the European Union context. So we would be looking for that type of support, and maybe your views on that would be interesting.
Okay, well, that's something that we can talk about, Breed. Certainly. Look, I've on the public record, I'm a firm believer in supporting Irish and supporting Irish jobs. We have a great FDI community here in Ireland. That's why our economy has remained robust through this pandemic as well. And you look at our tax take in Ireland hasn't been significantly hit, particularly on income tax, as some would have thought. And a lot of that is down to the diverse nature of this economy that hasn't been created over the last 5 or 10 years. It's been created over the last 30, 40, 50 years by visionary people who looked outside of Ireland to trade outside of Ireland, have companies come into Ireland and to invest here. And where we have now multinationals, many multinationals that are members of yours who are trading with countries all across the globe, and that's what we need to keep to do. So look, I'm always happy to engage with Guaranteed Irish in anything I can do as Minister within the legal framework to help. I'll do that, you know.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that, Minister. Thank you for that. And that actually brings me on very nicely, because as part of the whole supporting local within Ireland and within the European context, obviously there's a real demand and drive on all of the members and all of us as citizens of the state to take cognizance of our environmental and green agenda and trying to reduce those emissions. So Philip, if you come off mute again, maybe, what I'd like to ask you is there in your whole circular economy and your waste plan for a circular economy that you've launched recently, is there an incentive for the construction industry there? And are there penalties for those who don't do it? Because obviously there's a whole notion that if you're buying local, you're reducing carbon miles in terms of sourcing your materials locally. So surely there's a reward for that. What are your department doing in that space?
Yeah, thanks, Brie. I mean, I think we've seen over the last 6 months or so the extent to which COVID-19 has exposed some fragilities, if you like, within the global kind of economic model, and it's causing a rethink about obviously the way we work, the way we attend events like this, the way we produce things, transport them, buy them, and consume them. Transition to a circular economy, I think, contains some important answers in terms of the need to design and make products that are repairable, reusable, about self-sufficiency and local production and consumption, about shorter and more resilient supply chains, about changing our consumption and production patterns, and about creating jobs and training and enterprise opportunities at a local level. So again, the transition to circular economy, I think, provides significant potential here too. One of the things that the Waste Action Plan does in a concrete way in terms of incentives for construction is around incorporating green criteria into public purchasing, because obviously the state is a significant spender. So there's a commitment in there to convert our policy objectives into solid actions. So we need to ensure that the procurement of goods and services by the state underpins the credibility of our national policy objectives and accelerates the transition to a circular economy. And in doing that, then we create the job creation potentials for the construction sector. So specifically, the Waste Action Plan provides a mandate for driving this on through the mandatory inclusion of green criteria in all public purchasing and how to promote circular economy principles in public procurement. I'm working with the OGP to develop public procurement frameworks as green public procurement exemplars to support public bodies showing leadership in sustainable behavior. So things like reducing the length of supply chains, reducing the kind of the carbon miles associated with the delivery of with products into the supply chain. So there's lots of stuff. We have various ways of not just sort of incentivizing or subsidizing the sector, but we have ways of improving the regulatory framework and reducing costs. And I think this is where we can give a real advantage to locally based construction companies.
Okay, Tom, can I ask you, the big elephant in the room has come back again, Brexit. What are our big concerns here in relation to the construction sector, with an overview again nationally in terms of the impact to us here with Brexit?
Well, I suppose we're all concerned about the stance that the UK have taken over the last couple of weeks. I was listening this morning to Ursula von der Leyen giving her State of the Union address, and actually, in fairness, she was extremely strong about standing over the rule of international law, very strong in supporting the peace process, very strong in supporting the Irish government stance. So look, at who knows whether it's tactical or whether it's saber rattling or whatever, but time has moved on. But I was certainly heartened this morning to see the very strong line that the President of the Commission took, and she referenced Michel Barnier, who was in the audience there as well, as you know, a very strong negotiator. So probably a lot of stuff is going to happen over the next couple of weeks. It's a bit like the last 10 minutes in an All-Ireland final. You know, the ball can go anywhere. But certainly it is worrying. And I suppose the most we can do, generally we source our materials from suppliers. So clearly, you know, Paddy Kelly must have a big advantage if he's only has to ship it up from a tie. Whereas if you're trying to source something, whether it be on the continent or in the UK, and it has to travel across land with the whole new arrangement, because there's no question about it, importation and exportation is going to be a hell of a lot more awkward, slower, and so on, even with the investment that's promised in new technology and so on. Like, I think Britain have been talking about setting up massive truck parks, you know, on both down on the cross-channel link and so on. They haven't even materialized yet. So, like, it is going to be chaos if we don't find a deal that eliminates a lot of the tariffs and so on. But I suppose the one thing, like, the EU have set aside a very substantial budget to deal with the fallout, and I think both in terms of the EU and the US, they're both committed to protecting the peace process, which we all take for granted now, but I think it has to be a big bargaining chip for us as well. So I'd say there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of arguments to be won and lost over the next period. You know, generally, what would appear to me, and then of course I would be biased, the sensible commentator in the UK was it 5 or 7 former prime ministers coming out and making their views known, you know, about their particular stance. The UK has a massive lot to lose in this as well, as we have ourselves. Like, whether we like it or not, we're very much in throw with the UK, whether it be the business links, whether it be the family links, whether it be all of that, you know. And if it goes bad for the UK, it goes bad for us. So look, I'm still very hopeful, but it is a worrying period, and our own firms are, you know, making their arrangements with suppliers to make sure that, number one, that the right specifications are going to be in place after the 1st of January, but secondly, that the timeline is going to be important. And you know, we have a bit of a scare lately about timber and Irish timber, and I know that this is something that you know a little bit about, but you know, there's a very real threat that our Irish sawmills won't have any Irish timber because of a scarcity of felling licenses by the end of this year. And I know that some suppliers are already looking to source timber, because clearly when builders want to put on roofs, they need timber. So that's just an example of shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think it should certainly be one area that we need to resolve immediately. We're going to have enough of problems without having any national timber to supply the building industry.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. One of the questions there we have is actually on that. Is the Minister aware the sawmills will run out of wood in November? This will and is already impacting supplying the builders, merchants and sites. What is the government position on this? So we'll ask the Minister to come in on that in a minute. I think he's just gone for a second there. And also, I suppose there's another question in relation to the retrofitting at the 500,000 number. Will there be a multi-annual budget provided through the SEAI and another new agency? This will provide security to builders to hire the staff needed to do the work. Up to now, the budgets have been year to year, which will not support builders to hire and train new apprentices. So we need to look at that as well as 2 agendas, and maybe even to be pushing those through the CIF as well, Tom, would be a help. Yeah,
well, we raised those with the 2 ministers on Monday, and Minister Donoghue said that the leader of the Green Party is bringing forward some proposals. So that's going to come from his particular party budget, and Philip is probably aware of that. But you know, politically, Fianna Fáil made a very strong commitment to resolving the housing issue, and the Green Party have made a very, very strong commitment in terms of reducing our emissions and so on. Retrofit clearly is a big factor in that. So there's a lot of political commitments at stake here, and despite the difficult budgetary situation, both of them are very good at creating economic activity and creating a good return on the investment. So we wait and see, you know, how the heavyweights are going to go on in these budget negotiations.
I'll just come back in because the Minister has been able to rejoin, so I might have got lost in there for a minute. It's in relation to the sawmills issue. I'm not sure if you heard that, Minister. It will run out of wood in November. This will and is already impacting supply to builders, merchants and sites. What is the government position on this?
Yeah, Breed, I heard some of...
Unmute there, Minister, maybe. Minister, you're on mute there.
I'm not actually, Breed. There's a problem with the connection. It's
all right. So while we're just trying to get the Minister back on, I'm going to talk. There's a couple of questions in here in relation to the Guaranteed Irish House. You might see the symbol behind me. So we have the initial first phase done in relation to the Guaranteed Irish House, guaranteedirishhouse.ie. It'll be of interest to you to look at that yourself. If you're a member of Guaranteed Irish, that service is free to you. And that whole initiative is about people who are speccing out new developments, be they private, public, schools, hospitals, developments, the opportunity is as a first port of call for an Irish supplier, which would be very much in line with Philip's agenda of supporting the whole local sustainable and local circular economy. It's about sourcing the provider of materials or the supply chain with the materials locally. That will help you with your supply chain being faster, less carbon miles, and obviously using materials that are available to us here in Ireland. It's also supporting, from Guaranteed Irish's point of view, jobs and communities, and keeping those communities alive, which is what it's all about. If we keep enterprise at the heart of our communities, the communities will stay alive themselves. And more importantly, drive the construction sector as well from the CIS point of view. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you in relation to joining in on the Guaranteed Irish House. You're all very welcome to join. And if you're a member, it's only for Guaranteed Irish members. So if you're a member, it's a free service.
Reid, could I just add something, just
sure,
in case the minister's not back in, just add to what Tom was saying there about retrofitting. So, I mean, we'll see shortly in the context of Budget 2021 an announcement around the future funding. And I think you'll see it'll be very ambitious for 2021 anyway. But it's important to note, and again, Tom alluded to this earlier on, the approach internationally to this economic crisis is very different to what we saw in 2008, 2009, where investment is now being prioritized. And you can see it's very clearly part of the Next Generation EU, where they've said that they will look most favorably on investment plans that prioritize the green agenda and digitalization. So, you know, there's a lot of support at an EU level for this kind of project as well. So just to make that point.
Minister, you're back to us. Thanks very much. Now, I know you're all socially distancing in the government, but we need you online here. So good to see you back. Tell me your opinion on the sawmills there, Minister. We are a bit concerned. We have some members, we have a lot of employees in the country in that space. Yeah. What's the government's take on this?
Sure. We came up at Cabinet there last week and the week before, Breed, and we intend to this is something that has been an ongoing issue with regard to it. So it is being addressed. Minister Eamon Ryan has been heavily involved in it too. So, you know, I'm aware that supplies will become short and are becoming shorter, and we need to make sure that the product is going to the mill. So that's something we're committed to doing. As I said, Eamon Ryan, I don't know, have I lost me again there?
No, you're fine.
I know the connection for some reason really keeps coming in and out. So generally okay, so it is something that has come up at Cabinet. If you heard that, Eamon Ryan, our minister, has been dealing with this. So we're acutely aware of the issue, and I expect it to be to have further word on it literally within the next week or so. So I'll report back to your members via yourself, Breed.
That'd be super, Minister, because there are 12,000 people employed and it contributes 2 billion to our economy. It's a vital supply to our builders and our merchants and house building, as you know yourself. So we'd appreciate all your support on that. And the final question then, Minister, if you can still hear us. I'm just wondering if I lost the Minister there. The line is a little bit frozen. The final question is, Dara, if you can possibly hear us and not see us, but the whole piece on the retrofitting, will there be an annual budget provided through the SAI, and how will that provide security to the builders who up to now budgets have been year to year, and if we want to try and support builders to hire new apprentices, is there an opportunity to look at that? Looks like I've lost the Minister again. So that's unfortunate. I will certainly put the question to the Minister and forward it on to all our attendees who are here today. In relation to our attendees and our speakers, I'd like to thank the panel and hand back to Paddy Kelly, who's Chair of Guaranteed Irish and indeed Managing Director of Tegel and member of Guaranteed Irish himself.
Thanks, Breed, for mentioning Integral. I was mentioned by name 3 times and the company was never mentioned. And I do like any type of advertisement for the company more than myself.
I thought you changed the name of the company, Paddy.
Yeah, you couldn't remember it, Tom. That was
yeah,
you couldn't remember it. Anyway, it's been very informative. Before I go and wrap up, I have one question for Tom, if I can. I know we have time. when you look at the maths of what the Minister and you said about the number of completions this year, the Minister said the plan was to do 25,000. You're saying that we'd probably come in around 17,000. Even if you extrapolate the figures, that's more in line with last year than it is with what the ambition was for this year. It leaves a deficit of 7,000 houses this year against the plan of 25,000, and we already have a deficit. So the deficit is getting bigger. Will the construction industry be able to ramp up to make 25, 30,000 houses per annum, which is the need right now?
Well, it's always my view that we will and we can. Generally, the biggest nervousness amongst construction firms, be they big or small, is will they have enough work? As soon as the work materializes, you know, you never ever see it not being able to be done or being delayed and so on. And we have adapted very well. I think it was Philip said, or maybe the Minister, but adapted very well to COVID with our standard operating procedures and work practices. And thanks be to God, and I'm touching wood here, like we were the first industry to open. We had to go and develop all those SOPs. We're very involved with government about the back to work safety protocol and so on. And we've succeeded. I think the latest figure, and it hasn't been for publication, but there's only about 50 actual incidents of positive COVIDs amongst the entire construction industry. Now, that's not to say tomorrow morning you could have an explosion somewhere. So we've been careful not to say anything about that, but it has worked well. And I think we have the capacity. There's not we are still going ahead with a careers campaign, but the same pressure about getting people to work isn't there, because they're obviously not working in hospitality and they're not working in a whole lot of other sectors across the
Okay.
So no,
Thanks for that, Tom.
I wouldn't be concerned, Paddy.
Because the manufacturers, we're in the same boat. We can ramp up and we can supply, but we do need to start building more than 17,000 houses per annum, 20,000 houses per annum. Thanks very much, Tom. I would like to thank.
Paddy, we have the roofers.
Well, this is the point. I have the slates. So thank you to our three speakers. Very, very, really grateful for you taking the time out. Sorry for the Minister, it wasn't, his connectivity wasn't the best. So he's out in Malahide, Breed, so you may do something about that. It's been a good forum, I have to say. It's been short and sweet. And for me, I think a special thanks goes out to Davy, who are the sponsor of this forum and all the other forums we do for all the other industries. So Davies, have been very good to Guaranteed Irish, and I'd just like to acknowledge them. So thank you all for joining. Breed will send you on any information that you request, and good luck, and I hope the business takes off between now and the year end for us all. Thank you.
Just as a final note to anybody who's interested in the upcoming webinars for Guaranteed Irish, next week we'll be looking, or on the 24th of September, we'll be hosting a webinar with Davy, in fact, and it'll all be about navigating the negative interest rate environment with Davy themselves. So very interesting, not just for individuals, but obviously for the construction sector as well. One of the speakers alluded to the fact that money has never been so cheap, and this is what to do with all your savings if you're losing it. But also, even just from the point of view of business, let's really look at how to work what we have. So I'm looking forward immensely to that with Davy next week on the 24th of September at 2 p.m. Anybody who's interested, contact guaranteedirish.ie, info@guaranteedirish.ie. We'll get you an invitation and get you online. Many thanks for everybody for that. And again, thank you, Chairman, for hosting.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.